Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I'm continuing my delve into 80s slasher films. And now I've come to the 1980 film Funeral Home, or as it was originally titled, Cries in the Night, which was directed by William Fruitt, I'm guessing is how you pronounce it, who he also directed Death Weekend and Killer Party, and several episodes of Goosebumps, so that's cool. The House by the Lake was the U.S. title of Death Weekend. So this was made in, it was actually made in Canada, because in the early 80s, where slasher films were so popular, one of the reasons why they were able to make them so incredibly cheap and quickly was tax laws were different for whatever reason at that time. I mean, I'm sure they still are, but so they were making a lot of them in Canada, and it stars Leslie Donaldson, Kay Hawtrey, Alf Humphreys, Harvey Atkin, Jack Van Avera, and Barry Morse. Which, while watching this, I was looking at Leslie Donaldson, and I thought she was Kate McNeil from House on Sorority Row. That's not the case. That's Kate McNeil. Leslie Donaldson was in Happy Birthday to Me and Curtains. She was in the famous ice skating scene in Curtains. And an interesting thing about this is it is a slasher film, but this is the kind of, it's very story driven. And it's not about the mystery. It's not who is killing these people, but it is more driven by story than it is kills. I mean, there's only 3 kills in the whole film. Well, technically, yeah, there's 3 kill scenes, one of which is a twofer, so we get 4 deaths. Very spread out throughout the film. But I actually liked this film. I liked the story. It had, it had a good atmosphere to it. I thought the story was well told and went through it at a good pace. This was not like, what was the one that I reviewed recently? See, I'm already forgetting videos that that I've done where it was slow. God, why am I having such a hard time remembering? And if this thing wasn't so damn slow. Schizoid, which, Schizoid I didn't really mind, but Final Exam, Jesus, wow, I'm already forgetting shit that I've done. It's not quite like Final Exam, because I actually like the story in this. Leslie Donaldson plays this girl who, for the summer, is staying with her grandmother, whose house is this inn that was formerly a funeral home. Back like when, and she plays a girl named Heather, back around like when Heather was a kid. But several years ago, her grandfather went missing. And there's rumors around town about him, but as far as her and her grandmother are concerned, he disappeared. So it was from then, it went from a funeral home to an inn. And there's some people staying there. And, there's this one guy who is kind of a slob. He has his girlfriend over, and we get the idea, she's kind of sort of a woman of the night or very free-spirited. Because the grandmother is this very proper kind of, you know, it doesn't really play on religion, but she does talk about God a lot. This other elderly man lives there, and then there's the property handyman, who they really go out of their way to make simple. Because, I mean, when he talks, he's like, Mrs. Chalmers, Mrs. Chalmers. And some of the guests start to go missing. That's basically the plot. At night, Heather hears voices coming from the cellar, like her grandmother arguing with someone, and she's told not to go down there. So, with guests going missing and her being told stay out of the cellar, but hearing voices coming from there, she knows something's going on. And there's a local boy there named Rick, who she's kind of starting a thing with, played by Dean Garbett. So she sort of confides in him, and throughout the film, he starts to tell her about her grandfather, which, because of her grandmother, she has this idyllic kind of image of her grandfather, when in reality, from what this guy Rick and other people around town are saying, is he was a mean, vicious alcoholic who had, he did have a mistress, and he ran off with her. That's his disappearance. I want to get the name. Okay. The local deputy, I believe he was a deputy, is Alf Humphreys, actually, who played Howard in My Bloody Valentine, who passed away last year. I actually didn't know that. That's one of my favorite slasher films of all time, My Bloody Valentine. And the movie does kind of make us think at some point, it's the handyman or it's the grandmother. And yeah, the deaths are very spread out. And normally this would be a rant saying it's very boring, where's our kills, why don't we have a higher body count? But I actually liked this story. I liked, it's definitely more atmospheric, because like the scenes where Heather wakes up and hears the voices, it is still set in this creepy funeral home. A lot of the funeral home stuff is still there. Like there's still a hearse in the garage. And like when she goes down to the cellar to follow the voices, there's still like jars of stuff, gurneys and tables. It's still set up like a funeral home in the parts that aren't really being used. And with the lighting, with like the moonlight and stuff, it's actually pretty effective. It actually looks decent, looks cool. It's kind of creepy to watch. Like the scene when she's down there, she bumps into something and a jar falls. It breaks. And the grandmother comes out of the room she's in. And then she's got to race all the way back up to the bedroom to pretend to be asleep. So it does add tension when it has to. And of course, the one slobby guy who's dating, I guess, the loose woman, he's told that he has to be out by the end of the day because she doesn't approve of their sinful lifestyle. But she's like sunbathing and flirts and humiliates the handyman, like, you like my body, you want to touch me, and of course he's like, then she just laughs at him. So they come back home, and she's like, you were supposed to be out today, and he's like, well, I paid for the weekend, so I'll be out tomorrow. But they go out in his car, they drive out to a quarry to park, and then this truck comes around, keeps ramming the car until it goes off the cliff into the quarry. And then later on, the elderly guy that lives there, he's asking around town, which the grandmother makes ends meet by making these artificial some sort of flower bouquets or whatever. Brings them into town to sell them, and Heather and Rick will like help her around town, set them up or whatever. Well, one day the grandmother gives this uh, elderly tenant, Mr. Davis, a ride into town, and he's asking around like, you know, I can't remember how he worded it, but oh, he's asking about this certain woman who also went missing around the same period as the grandfather. And then this sort of drunkard guy comes up to him and is like, well, I can answer your questions. And they walk off. And then later on, it's nighttime, and then Mr. Davis approaches the grandmother and was like, well, I got some answers around town. And, turns out, does this woman's name ring a bell? And we kind of see the very happy sort of, oh, well, everything's great. God has, shined upon us. Sort of like, I think she's sewing or doing something. She just kind of, when she hears the name that he mentions, and he's like, that was my wife. And supposedly, that's the woman that your husband was having an affair with, and they ran off together. And of course, she fights it, she denies it, and sort of asks him to leave. Then he goes to go night fishing, like he was going to, and he's killed with a pickaxe. We can see that the killer wears a flannel, and I think we're also supposed to believe that it's the grandfather. Like, through everything, I guess, like, maybe he didn't run off. She kept him prisoner down there, and he gets out to kill. I think that's one thing the movie wants us to think. And then kills him with a pickaxe, which, again, with the lighting, it looks decent. I mean, you get, like, the moonlight with, like, the shadow of the tree branches. You don't get a lot of blood in the movie, but I do forgive it because I like everything around it. The script isn't that strong. I mean, there's even one part where shortly after, because then the killer buries the body in the local cemetery. So then it's the next day, Heather and Rick are downtown, and she's telling him, like, she won't let me down to the cellar. I hear voices down there, like she's arguing. And Rick is like, well, if it makes you feel better, we'll go down there and we'll check it out. We'll get rid of this nonsense once and for all. So the script isn't that strong. Not all the acting is very strong either. I mean, I would say Leslie Donaldson did fine. The actress who played the grandmother, Kay Hawtrey as Maud Chalmers, she did fine. Barry Morse as Mr. Davis, he did fine as well. Alf Humphreys as the deputy, I liked him. Well, actually, in between Mr. Davis being killed and her saying we should check out the cellar, people are swimming down at the quarry. Heather, Rick, his brother, bunch of people. I think it was Heather, jumps off the quarry, and when she hits the water, she goes down, and there the bodies of the couple in the car are found. And then that's when they take the car out, which has no engine in it, by the way. And so then, like, the police are looking at it, and they realize there's no luggage. If they were to leave, why is there no luggage? Because they were going to rule it as a car accident. And then finally, the handyman, I think, is chasing the cat around. And he hears voices downstairs in the cellar. So he goes down there. It's like, Mrs. Chalmers. Yeah, they really go over the top with making him simple. And we see the killer reach for the injection tube for the embalming fluid, stabs him in the back with it. He goes down, and it sounds like he's being stabbed a bunch of times because the way the camera is, it's sort of like he's like that on the floor, but we don't really see the body move like he's being stabbed. Maybe that's not what's happening. But, yeah, so then the handyman is killed, and then that's when Heather tells Rick, I think something's going on, we should check out the cellar. He brings her back home, all the lights are out. She thinks Grandma's asleep, but they go inside, she's not home. So they decide to check out the cellar, they go down, they find the handyman's body dead down there. And that's when the door opens and we're revealed to the killer, which I kind of didn't see this coming. I honestly thought it was going to be the grandfather was kept down there the whole time. He didn't disappear. He's like kept as prisoner or whatever and gets out to kill. Which, before I get to that, Rick tells Heather a couple stories that sort of breaks the idyllic image of her grandfather, which first she's like, tell me a story about him. I want to hear about him. So he tells her the story about one time when he and his friend were really young, like 6 or 7. They would go to the house to see if they could see bodies being taken in and out. And they get really close, and then her grandfather, who again was a raging, angry alcoholic, yelled at him and sort of pushed him down in the cellar and locked it to scare them. Then when he went down there running around yelling at them, they made it out. And then when he told Heather about how he didn't disappear, he ran off with the mistress, her grandmother was locked up, or was put away for a nervous breakdown shortly after. So with those put together, the killer is the grandmother. It's psycho. That's what it is. She puts his flannel shirt on, talks in his voice to herself, which she responds to in her voice. And she chases them around the basement. Sometimes Grandma will come back out and be like, oh, Heather, darling. And then this is when the deputy and the sheriff think something else is up. So they arrive to the house. And of course they hear the commotion because they're, again, the actress did a decent job because she has to go back and forth between being like all evil and talking sort of like the grandfather, and then just going these tirades with the pickaxe, just hitting everything, smashing everything in the room, and then breaking it to be like, oh darling, oh. Which Heather's running around trying to hide, comes across this one room where her grandfather is in his burial suit, in a chair, surrounded by mounds of flowers, and he's all rotted. So it's basically Psycho, but they did it in their own way. And that's when the sheriff and the deputy and Rick come downstairs. They find Heather and Grandma, and they just take Grandma away, like, it's okay, like, we found your husband. Don't have to look for him anymore. And she's like, yes, but, you know, like an old lady, like, but James is here. Everything's fine. And then it has the Psycho ending, because the credits immediately roll, but it's the deputy, Art Humphreys, talking to, I think, a reporter, saying how, yeah, her husband was an alcoholic, having an affair with this Helena Davis. Maud, the grandmother, came home one day, caught them in the act, killed both of them, buried them, or took his body, because couldn't stand being without him, so kept his body and started talking and acting like him to herself. And then it shows people digging up the local cemetery to find the other bodies. And then, yeah, of course, the cat comes up. Sheriff picks up the cat, pets it. Film ends. And I liked the story. That's what kept me going. Like, yes, it is still a slasher film. It just happens to have a lower body count, a more spaced out body count, less blood than, say, a Friday the 13th movie. But I liked the story of, okay, this girl staying at her grandmother's house, which is an inn, formerly a funeral home. She has this perfect image of her perfect grandfather, but the whole town, everyone outside the inn knows the truth pretty much. And there's just secrets literally in the cellar that will explain everything to her, and residents within the inn go missing, but being killed. And she is sort of caught in this world of it and starts to figure it out bit by bit, or notice more and more of it. It was told well enough to keep my interest, keep me entertained, keep it from being another Final Exam kind of slasher film. So I actually enjoyed it. This is another one that I can forgive for low body count, little to no blood. I thought most of the actors did fine. When we did have a kill scene, I thought it was well done, especially with Mr. Davis. I thought it was well shot, using, I'm assuming, natural lighting, out in the night, under the moon, the way he, person coming at him with a flashlight so he can't see, and he's kind of trying to plead. And even when he gets hit, he has to like, please, like he just got hit in the face with a fucking pickaxe. So for a very story-driven slasher, I actually enjoyed it. I could say this is one of those slashers that I enjoy. So it was like, the slasher elements were kind of low, and it was very high in story, but I thought it paid off. I thought, and yes, it is very derivative of Psycho, at least the payoff or the ending, but I still enjoyed it. It still felt like its own film, which ultimately is what matters most. Is it its own thing? Yes. Was it entertaining enough, and was the story well enough told to make up for the lower slasher elements? Yes, it was, at least for me. So that is 1980's Funeral Home, aka Cries in the Night. Thank you for watching.